It's hard to believe tomorrow's going to be the start of a new year, 2025, but it is. So, it's been a wonderful year. I hope it has been for you as it has been for me. And let's just pray that 2025 be an even better year than 2024. And what we do, we look up and we trust in the Lord. Keep our eyes fixed on Him no matter what's going on in the world, whether it's strange fog or drones in the sky or wars or rumors of wars. We just trust in the Father to keep us and lead and guide us in the ways we should go. So it's grab yourself a cup of coffee, cup of tea, some cookies or chocolates from Christmas. Maybe even a turkey sandwich would be really good right about now. And today we're going to the last chapter of Deuteronomy, which is only fitting for this time. So let me put my specs on here and we'll get to it. So Deuteronomy 34, the last chapter. Now sometime later, Moses left the lowlands of Moab, and he went up to Mount Pisgah to the peak of Mount Nebo, which is across the Jordan River from Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land as far north as Gilead and the town of Dan. He let Moses see the territories that would soon belong to the tribes of Naphtali, Ephraim, Manasseh, and Judah, as far west as the Mediterranean Sea. The Lord also showed him the land in the south, from the valley near the town of Jericho, known as the city of palm trees, down to the town of Zoar. The Lord said, Moses, this is the land I was talking about when I solemnly promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that I would give land to their descendants. I have let you see it, but you will not cross the Jordan and go in because of the sin that Moses had committed. And so Moses, the Lord's servant, died there in Moab, just as the Lord had said. And the Lord buried him in a valley near the town of Beth Peor. But even today, no one knows exactly where he's buried. Moses was 120 years old when he died, yet his eyesight was still good, and his body was strong. It's amazing for 120 years old. The people of Israel stayed in the lowlands of Moab, where they mourned and grieved 30 days for Moses, as was their custom. But before Moses died, he had placed his hands on Yehoshua, and the Lord had given Joshua wisdom. The Israelites paid attention to what Joshua said, and they obeyed the commandments that the Lord had given Moses. There has never again been a prophet in Israel like Moses. The Lord spoke face to face, and keep the faith. God bless you. With him and sent him to perform powerful miracles in the presence of the king of Egypt and his entire nation. No one else has ever had the power to do such great things as Moses did for everyone to see. Moses was a great man. All right, let's go to Joshua 1:1. Moses, the Lord's servant, was dead. So the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, who had been the assistant of Moses. And the Lord said, My servant Moses is dead. Now you must lead Israel across the Jordan River into the land I'm giving to all of you. Wherever you go, I'll give you that land as I promised Moses. It will reach from the southern desert to the Lebanon mountains in the north and to the northeast as far as the great Euphrates River. It will include the land of the Hittites and the land from here at the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea on the west. Yehoshua, I will always be with you and help you as I helped Moses, and no one will ever be able to defeat you. Long ago, I promised the ancestors of Israel that I would give this land to their descendants. So be strong and brave. Be careful to do everything my servant Moses taught you. Never stop reading the book of the law, or the Torah, he gave you. Day and night you must think about what it says. And if you obey it completely, you and Israel will be able to take this land. I've commanded you, Yehoshua, to be strong and brave. Don't ever be afraid or discouraged. I am the Lord your God, and I will be there to help you wherever you go. And that's God's promises to us. And he tells us and commands us, be strong, be brave. Don't get afraid, discouraged, or depressed. Keep looking up. Lord your God is with you, and he will lead you. Well, Joshua ordered the tribal leaders to go through the camp and tell everyone. And in a few days, we will cross the Jordan River to take the land that the Lord our God is giving us. So fix as much food as you'll need for the march into the land. Joshua told the men of the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and East Manasseh, the Lord's servant Moses said that the Lord our God has given you land here on the east side of the Jordan River where you could live in peace. Your wives, your children, your animals can stay here in the land Moses gave you. But all of you that can serve in our army must pick up your weapons and lead the men of the other tribes across the Jordan River. They are your relatives, so you must help them. Conquer the land that the Lord is giving them. The Lord will give peace to them as he has given peace to you, and then you can come back and settle here in the land that Moses promised you. Well, the men answered, we'll cross the Jordan River and we'll help our relatives. We'll fight anywhere you send us. If the Lord our God will help you as he helped Moses, and if you are strong and brave, we will obey you as we obeyed Moses. We'll even put to death anyone who rebels against you or refuses to obey you. Well, Joshua chose 2 men as spies and sent them from their camp at Acacia with these instructions. Go across the river and find out as much as you can about the whole region, especially about the town of Jericho. The 2 spies left the Israelite camp at Acacia and went to Jericho, where they decided to spend the night at the house of a prostitute named Rahab. But someone found out about them and told the king of Jericho, some Israelite men have come here tonight and they are spies. So the king sent soldiers to Rahab's house to arrest the spies. Meanwhile, Rahab had taken the men up to the flat roof of her house and had hidden them under some piles of flax plants that she had put there to dry. The soldiers came to her door and they demanded, let us have the men who are staying at your house. They are spies. Rahab answered, some men did come to my house, but I didn't know where they had come from. They left about sunset, just before it was time to close the town gate. I don't know where they are going, but if you hurry, maybe you can catch them. Well, the guards at the town gate let the soldiers leave Jericho, but they closed the gate again as soon as the soldiers went through. Then the soldiers headed toward the Jordan River to look for the spies at the place where people crossed the river. Rahab went back up to her roof, and the spies were still awake, so she told them, I know that the Lord has given Israel this land. Everyone shakes with fear because of you. We heard how the Lord dried up the Red Sea so you could leave Egypt. And we heard how you destroyed Sihon and Og, those 2 Amorite kings east of the Jordan River. We know that the Lord your God rules heaven and earth, and we've lost our courage and our will to fight. Please, please promise me in the Lord's name that you will be as kind to my family as I have been to you. Do something to show us that you won't let your people kill my father and my mother and my brothers and sisters and their families. Rahab, the spies answered, if you keep quiet about what we're doing, we promise to be kind to you when the Lord gives us this land. We pray that the Lord will kill us if we don't keep our promise. Rahab's house was built into the town wall, and one of the windows in her house faced across the wall. She gave the spies a rope, showed them the window, and said, use this rope to let yourselves down to the ground outside the wall. Then hide in the hills. The men who are looking for you won't be able to find you there. They'll give up and come back after a few days, and you can be on your way. Well, the spies said to Rahab, you made us promise to let you and your family live. We will keep our promise, but you can't tell anyone why we were here. You must tie this red rope on your window when we attack, and your father and mother, your brothers, and everyone else in your family must be here with you. We'll take the blame if anyone who stays in this house gets hurt. But anyone who leaves your house will be killed, and it won't be our fault." "I'll do exactly what you said," Rahab said. Then she sent them on their way and tied the red rope to the window. The spies hid in the hills for 3 days while the king's soldiers looked for them along the roads, and as soon as the soldiers gave up and returned to Jericho, the 2 spies went down into the Jordan Valley and crossed the river. They reported to Joshua and told him everything that had happened. "We're sure the Lord has given us a whole country," they said. "The people there shake with fear every time they think of us." Well, early the next morning, Joshua and the Israelites packed up and left Acacia. They went to the Jordan River and camped there that night. And 2 days later, their leaders went through the camp shouting, "When you see some of the priests carrying the sacred chest, you'll know it is time to cross to the other side. You've never been there before, and you won't know the way unless you follow the chest. But don't get too close. Stay about a half a mile back." Joshua told the people, "Make yourself acceptable to worship the Lord, because he is going to do some amazing things for us." Then Joshua turned to the priests and said, "Take the chest and cross the Jordan River ahead of us." So the priests picked up the chest by its carrying poles and they went on ahead. The Lord said to Joshua, "Beginning today, I will show the people that you are their leader, and they will know that I am helping you as I helped Moses. Now tell the priests who are carrying the chests to go a little way into the river and stand there." Joshua spoke to the people, "Come here and listen to what the Lord says. He will do. The Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Gerashites, the Amorites, and the Jebusites control this land on the other side of the river. But the living God will be with you and will force them out of the land when you attack. And now God is going to prove that he's powerful enough to force them out. Just watch the sacred chest that belongs to the Lord, the ruler of the whole earth." And yes, he is the ruler of the whole earth. "As soon as the priests carrying the chest step into the Jordan, the water will stop flowing and pile up as if someone had built a dam across a river. The Lord has also said that each of the 12 tribes should choose one man to represent it." Well, the Israelites packed up and left camp, and the priests carrying the chest walked in front until they came to the Jordan River, and the water in the river had risen over its banks as it often does in springtime. But as soon as the feet of the priests touched the water, the river stopped flowing and the water started piling up at the town of Adam near Zarethan, and no water flowed towards the Dead Sea. And the priest stood in the middle of the dry riverbed near Jericho while everyone else crossed the river. Amazing. Reminds me of when God parted the Red Sea and the water went up both sides and became dry land that the people of Israel walked across. Well, after Israel had crossed the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Tell one man from each of the 12 tribes to pick up a large rock from where the priests are standing. Then have the men set up those rocks as a monument at the place where you camp tonight." Joshua chose 12 men, and he called them together, and he told them, "Go to the middle of the riverbed where the sacred chest is, and pick up a large rock. Carry it on your shoulder to our camp. There are 12 of you, so there will be one rock for each tribe. Someday your children will ask, 'Why are those rocks here?' Then you can tell them how the water stopped flowing when the chest was being carried across the river. These rocks will always remind our people of what happened here today." The men followed the instructions that the Lord had given Joshua. They picked up 12 rocks, one for each tribe, and they carried them to the camp where they put them down. Joshua and some other men set up a monument next to the place where the priests were standing. This monument was also made of 12 large rocks, and it is still there in the middle of the river today. The army got ready for battle, and they crossed the Jordan, and they marched quickly past the sacred chest and into the desert near Jericho. 40,000 soldiers from the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and East Manasseh led the way as Moses had ordered. The priests stayed right where they were until the army had followed the orders that the Lord had given Moses and Joshua. Then the army watched as the priests carried the chest the rest of the way across. "Joshua," the Lord said, "have the priests come up from the Jordan and bring the chest with them." So Joshua went over to the priests, and he told them what the Lord had said. And as soon as the priests carried the chest past the highest place that the floodwaters of the Jordan had reached, the river flooded its banks again. And that's how the Lord showed the Israelites that Joshua was their leader. For the rest of Joshua's life, they respected him as they had respected Moses. Well, it was the 10th day of the first month of the year when Israel crossed the Jordan River, and they set up camp at Gilgal, which was east of the land controlled by Jericho. The men who had carried the 12 rocks from the Jordan brought them to Joshua, and they made them into a monument. And then Joshua told the people, "Years from now, your children will ask you why these rocks are here. Tell them the Lord our God dried up the Jordan River so we could walk across. He did the same thing here for us that he did for our people at the Red Sea, because he wants everyone on earth to know how powerful he is. And he wants us to worship only him." The Amorite kings west of the Jordan River and the Canaanite kings along the Mediterranean Sea, they lost their courage and their will to fight. And when they heard how the Lord had dried up the Jordan River to let Israel go through, wow, that's how God is. He's a wonderful God. While Israel was camped at Gilgal, the Lord said, "Joshua, make some flint knives and circumcise the rest of the Israelite men and boys." So Joshua made the knives, then circumcised those men and boys at Hareth Hill. This had to be done because none of Israel's baby boys had been circumcised during the 40 years that Israel had wandered through the desert after leaving Egypt. And why had they wandered for 40 years? It was because right after they left Egypt, the men in the army had disobeyed the Lord. And the Lord had said, "None of you men will ever live in to see the land that I promised Israel. It is a land rich with milk and honey. And someday your children will live there, but not before you die here in the desert." Everyone who had been circumcised needed time to heal, and they stayed in camp. So the Lord said to Joshua, "It was a disgrace for my people to be slaves in Egypt, but now I have taken away that disgrace." So the Israelites named the place Gilgal, and it still has that name. Israel continued to camp at Gilgal in the desert near Jericho, and on the 14th day of the same month, they celebrated Passover. And the next day, God stopped sending the Israelites manna to eat each morning, and they started eating food grown in the land of Canaan. They ate roasted grain and thin bread made of the barley they had gathered from nearby fields. Well, one day Joshua was near Jericho when he saw a man standing some distance in front of him. The man was holding a sword, so Joshua walked up to him and asked, "Are you on our side or are you on our enemy's side?" "Neither," the man answered. "I am here because I am the commander of the Lord's army." What a sight that must have been to see. Joshua immediately fell to his knees and he bowed down to the ground. "I am your servant," he said. "Tell me what to do." "Take off your sandals," the commander answered. "This is a holy place." Meanwhile, the people of Jericho had been locking the gates in their town wall because they were afraid of the Israelites. No one could go out or come in. Well, the Lord said to Joshua, "With my help, You and your army will defeat the king of Jericho and his army, and you will capture the town. And here's how to do it. March slowly around Jericho once a day for 6 days. Take along the sacred chest and have 7 priests walk in front of it carrying trumpets. But on the 7th day, march slowly around the town 7 times while the priests blow their trumpets. Then the priests will blast on their trumpets and everyone else will shout. The wall will fall down and your soldiers can go straight in from every side. So Joshua called the priests together and he said, take this chest and have 7 priests carry trumpets and march ahead of it. Next, he gave the army their orders. March slowly around Jericho. A few of you will go ahead of the chest to guard it, and most of you will follow it. Don't shout the battle cry or yell or even talk until the day I tell you to. Then let out a shout. Well, as soon as Joshua finished giving the orders, the army started marching. One group of soldiers led the way with 7 priests marching behind them, and they were blowing the trumpets. Then came the priests carrying the chests, followed by the rest of the soldiers. They obeyed Joshua's orders, and they carried the chest once around the town before returning to camp that night. Early the next morning, Joshua and everyone else started marching around Jericho in the same order as the day before. And one group of the soldiers was in front, followed by the 7 priests with the trumpets and the priests who carried the chests. The rest of the army came next. And the 7 priests blew their trumpets while everyone marched slowly around Jericho and back to camp. They did this once a day for 6 days. On the 7th day, the army got up at daybreak, and they marched slowly around Jericho, the same as they had done for the past 6 days, except on this day, they went around 7 times. And then the priests blew the trumpets, and Joshua yelled, "Get ready to shout! The Lord God will let you capture this town, but you must destroy it and everything in it to show that it now belongs to the Lord. But the woman Rahab helped the spies we sent, so protect her and the others who are inside her house, but kill everyone else in the town. The silver and the gold and everything made of bronze and iron belong to the Lord and must be put in his treasury. Be careful to follow these instructions, because if you see something you want and you take it, the Lord will destroy Israel, and it will be all your fault." Well, the priests blew their trumpets again, and the soldiers shouted as loud as they could, and the walls of Jericho fell flat. Then the soldiers rushed up to the hill, went straight into the town, and they captured it. They killed everyone, men, women, young and old, everyone except Rahab and the others in her house. They killed every cow, sheep, and donkey. Joshua said to the 2 men who had been spies, "Rahab kept you safe when I sent you to Jericho. We promised to protect her and her family, and we will keep that promise. Now go into her house and bring them out." The 2 men went into Rahab's house and brought her out, along with her father, her mother, her brothers, and her other relatives. Rahab and her family had to stay in a place just outside the Israelite army camp. But later they were allowed to live among the Israelites, and her descendants still do. The Israelites took the silver and the gold and the things made of bronze and iron, and they put them with the rest of the treasure that was kept of the Lord's house. And finally, they set fire to Jericho and everything in it. After Jericho was destroyed, Joshua warned the people, "Someday a man will rebuild Jericho, but the Lord will put a curse on him, and the man's oldest son will die when he starts to build the town wall. And by the time he finishes the wall and he puts gates in it, all his children will be dead." The Lord helped Joshua in everything he did, and Joshua was famous everywhere in Canaan. Wow. The Lord was so good to Joshua and the Israelites. So we're going to continue on in Joshua 7 next time. And I just want to say again, if you don't know the Father, and you don't know what he can do for you, like he did for Joshua and protected him and guided him and led him, and Rahab and her family. I'm asking you now to look up and to ask God to come in you and live his life in you. Give your life to God. There's no one on earth that can help you the way God can help you. So turn your life over to him and have a happy 2025, and hopefully I'll see you in another week or so. Take care and keep the faith.